like to welcome Miri Oz to the short video that we're doing together. Miri is an expert in geopolitics in the Middle East, security issues and conflicting narratives in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. She's a retired colonel in the Israeli Defense Forces who served 20 years in military intelligence before being appointed as the first female foreign media advisor to the Prime Minister. That's under Limmud Oz, I understand. And the Israeli government spokesperson in the Second Lebanon War. Miri, you now teach at the IDC Herzliya, and you're an associate at the International Institute for Counterterrorism. So looking forward to hearing you speak in a couple of weeks at Limmud Oz 2021. Now, I noted looking at your background that as a woman, you achieved great heights serving in the IDF, as I've just been mentioning, where apparently only 2% of colonels have been women. Would you say generally that women get a fair go, a good deal when they're in the IDF?
I love the way that you pose it. To me, that's so Australian. Do we get a fair go? I think that one of the challenges is that even though it's equal at the opening, meaning Israeli men and women are drafted, as we all know, not all of them, but overwhelmingly are drafted. Nowadays, literally, most units are open and equal. And yet, as you go up in the ranks, you see much less women. It's very similar to the glass ceiling in any other arena. I just think that the military profession makes it that much more challenging.
Yes, I suppose many people don't really think that women are ideally suited to be soldiers, and that's something that is in people's minds very much of the time. But anyway, we're not going to really talk about that topic in too much detail, and I don't know whether you will actually broach it in your discussion when you were on Limmud Oz. But so what are you planning to talk about when you're participating at Limmud Oz in a couple of weeks' time?
So, David, at the end, I'm all about geopolitics. I think when we think about the Middle East, when we think about Israel, 73 years old, when we think about Israel, the Israeli-Palestinian, Israel with its borders, Lebanon to the north, Syria to the northeast, Jordan, Egypt, we immediately think of what it means in terms of, I would say, war and peace. So I'm not going to give a Tolstoy novel, even though it's probably just as complex. I would like to try to present to people some of the driving forces and challenges that we saw both in the weeks of direct confrontation between Israel and Hamas and Israel in a broader sense over the last few weeks, and zoom out a bit because many of the challenges that brought about that violent confrontation still exist. So let's try to understand them a bit better. We don't have to agree with them, but we do need to try to understand them.
Yes, as you're indicating, we've been very much focused on Israel and Gaza in the last couple of weeks, but Israel has to get back down to business again. I was just wondering, perhaps you can give us an indication with the latest exchange between Israel and Gaza and the violence that we also saw on the Temple Mount. How would this have affected these new relations that Israel has established through the Abraham Accords? Has there been any potential harm with the Arab countries that have come on board with Israel?
That's part of the challenges of geopolitics, is that when you have policies that may not work with each other, and Jerusalem, you mentioned the Temple Mount is at the heart of Jerusalem. In Arabic, the Temple Mount is the Al-Aqsa compound. It's certainly going to be a main pivot in any discussion of geopolitics. It has not brought about the end of these new relationships. In its own way, it's been the first challenge to the relationships. And there's no question that we've gotten through it, but these are things that need to be addressed all of the time. The gaps in the way that overwhelmingly Muslims, which is one category, Arabs, which is a different category, and I would say Palestinians, which is a third category. These aren't overlapping, not all Palestinians are Muslims or Arabs, etc., to see how they relate to Jerusalem, to Al-Quds, and how that brings about a lot of the friction. Perhaps, in my hopes, it could also bring about part of the resolution.
So you haven't really indicated whether we've seen any potential damage as a result of what's happened, or is this too early to really assess whether any harm has been caused?
It hasn't brought immediate damage. It brought out voices, rhetoric. There's a big difference between voices and rhetoric that we're all very in tune to. We know that they can bring about very horrific actions. But in this case, the violent actions, the Hamas actions, the Israeli actions on the Temple Mount, are part of Israel's sovereignty over Jerusalem, but that sovereignty is questioned. So you have to put that into that broader context. As of now, UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco, the new ones on the block, it has not pushed them away. Egypt and Jordan, it has not pushed them away. Jordan is very involved because they have a direct participatory action in Jerusalem. But this has brought Egypt much more actively in because of the Gaza Strip. So as I said, it has not pushed them away. In a certain degree, it's pulled them in, both to the good, and perhaps for some with ideological backgrounds, it's going to challenge some Israeli ideas.
Well, if we go looking internally, though, into Israel, and we talk about the riots that occurred in mixed Israeli cities, do you think we can see any serious consequences arising out of this? I know we had similar issues following the Intifada in 2000 and everything calmed down. Do you think that this is just another storm in a teacup and everybody will settle down again to living relatively harmonious lives in Israel?
I don't think it's a storm in a teacup, and I think that people are going to settle back down, meaning the two don't contradict. This was a major issue. To a certain degree, it's a coming of age of a younger generation that were very small children or not even born when the Second Intifada took place, at that time that there were direct confrontations. In this sense, I can say that the Israeli police, both with what they didn't do and afterwards with what they did do, because they were very lacking in making law and order at the heart of Israeli cities in the way that you expect any police anywhere to do. And it took them time to get their act together. Once they did so, it's been vastly different. So it was not a storm in a teacup, but it has been, we're only days past it, weeks past it. That takes time to heal. I think that what it did bring out, and this is a positive thing, even in its negative context, is it brought out that silent majority voice within Israel on both sides, of the majority and the minority, not allowing, not enabling the extremists, I want to hope marginal extremists, from taking the narrative, from taking the rhetoric and making that the main issue. We need leadership on both sides that makes sure that you heal. But having said all of that, the challenge between the Israeli Jewish majority, the Arab Muslim minority, and again, those words don't always mean the same thing. These are challenges that we're going to always have to face here.
Okay. Looking at things in the broader sphere, where America has been always so involved in Israel and the Palestinian situation, and of course hasn't largely been very successful in resolving the conflict that continues. Are you concerned about the changes in American Middle East policy that we are seeing now under the still relatively new Biden administration?
I will, and I'm going to look at it long term, because when you say that we haven't arrived at a resolution for the conflict, I think, David, that you and I will agree that the United States was in and around when we arrived at a resolution with Egypt. That was pretty important. With Jordan, that was pretty important in the last year, with 4 additional countries. So to pose it as only being about the Palestinian issue, it's a very challenging one. And it isn't in the same place it was 35, 40 years ago, when I, as a much younger officer, was in and about within the military. So there are advances. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is one where it's 2 peoples, 1 land, a lot of issues of identity. In this one, you may need to push people to the table, but you need the 2 people to sit at the table. And I think in this sense that the changes in administration definitely impact the way that both sides act, both the Palestinian side and the Israeli. It won't be a spoiler alert to anybody that both on the Israeli side, we have very different voices, some of them marginal, some not. Most people are not aware that on the Palestinian side, you have vastly different voices too. Some call for Israel's destruction, some don't. Having said that, none of the Palestinian voices think that Zionism or Herzl was a good idea. That's the opening session. Now the question is the United States a facilitator? Is it trying to bring to the table? Is it trying to bring a full resolution in the way that President Trump did, or trying to bring them to the table in the way that President Obama or Clinton did? There are all sorts of ways of going about it. We now have a new administration. And the one thing I'll say about it is I don't think that they wanted to be center in this conflict. And it was thrust on their table because the Middle East is a place that does not only stay in the Middle East.
Yes, we haven't got time to talk about Iran, but that's going to be part of your subject that you're going to cover when you're talking to your audience at Limmud Oz. And that was what Biden would have expected, I think, would be his first main concern. But that still is unresolved, and as many other things are as well. I think you've given everybody a taste, Miri, of what to expect from your presentation at Limmud Oz, and I'm certainly looking forward to hearing what you say in greater detail.
I greatly look forward to it. I love the idea of speaking at Limmud Oz. Hope to see you all in a few weeks' time.
Looking forward to it.